Hello and welcome. I'm Paul Kriegler, registered dietitian and certified personal trainer with Lifetime. This is part 2 of the Food Sensitivity Plus webinar series. This one's entitled Diving Deeper. So it's designed to give you additional insights from the other markers on the Lifetime Food Sensitivity Plus panel. So if you haven't watched part 1, pause this video here, go watch part 1, and then come back and resume. Quick disclaimer, Lifetime assessments and lab testing are for consumer educational purposes only and do not constitute the practice of medicine, medical advice, care, diagnosis, or treatment, and are not intended to be a replacement or substitution for the medical advice, care, diagnosis, or treatment from a licensed medical provider. Please consult with your physician before embarking on any new nutritional or exercise program. Lifetime recommends that you share your test results with your healthcare provider. If you experience medical symptoms or signs, you should seek the care of a physician. So if you don't have it in front of you, pause now and get your Food Sensitivity Plus report ready. This was sent to you by encrypted email from Lifetime Labs at questdiagnostics.com. So once you have that in front of you, come back and resume the video. Like mentioned in part 1, the food antigens, the IgG antigens that were tested on the Lifetime panel included 2 types of dairy, gluten and wheat separately, corn, yeast, soy, egg whites and egg yolks, peas, tomatoes, nuts such as cashews, almonds, peanuts, which are a legume, and walnuts. The other markers tested on the Food Sensitivity Plus panel help us uncover potential reasons why the sensitivities developed in the first place. There are multiple reasons that the body cannot maintain proper digestive tract or gut integrity, and it has to do with how the other systems in the body are operating. Those other markers we're going to go through in a little more detail in this section, starting with fasting blood glucose. Now, ideally, our body has great control of blood sugar. It's one of the primary things that our body regulates kind of at the cost of all other things. Ideally, our fasting blood glucose should be kept in a very tight range after an overnight fast, between 82 and 88 milligrams per deciliter. If we don't have great control, that can contribute to inflammation and stress response in other parts of the body, including the digestive tract. In fact, if fasting glucose is high, you should look at testing a few other markers that may give us clues that there could be some insulin resistance or diabetes, type 2 diabetes risk factors that are underlying other health concerns you might have. Some other markers that are not on this panel that would be helpful if you have high glucose on this panel are hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month average of blood glucose, and C-peptide gives us a better read on what's going on with glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity at an individual level. If you have high fasting glucose, the nutrition elements to focus on are eating adequate protein every time you do eat a meal, and keeping carbohydrates at a moderate to minimum. That does help smooth out our blood sugar response. Build up to about 30 grams or more of fiber each day. Do that gradually so you don't bombard the digestive system with too much fiber too fast. You do want to scrutinize and remove added sugars for at least 30 days. If you don't do that, it can be very difficult to go through a modified elimination diet and emerge on the other end of it with very healthy gut integrity intact. So part of restoring or reviving the integrity, the physical integrity of the digestive lining is removing insults, including added sugar. From an exercise and lifestyle standpoint, it does help to lift weights 3 to 4 times a week and get at least 150 minutes a week of aerobic exercise. So it doesn't have to be intense, but it definitely does need to be something that raises your heart rate a little bit, raises your core body temperature, and challenges your aerobic system. Move frequently throughout the day, such as taking a 10-minute walk after each and every meal. The next set of markers are vitamin D and calcium. Ideally, vitamin D levels should be 50 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. Medically normal, it just needs to be above 30. But for optimal reasons, we like to have it a little bit higher because vitamin D is crucially important for a number of things. Most people know it as the reason you need vitamin D is to promote calcium absorption, which is important for muscle function. But there are dozens of other functions related to vitamin D that if we don't have vitamin D corrected, then our entire system can drift off course and our health can suffer. Sunlight is the best way to get vitamin D, but many of us spend most of our time indoors, or when we are outside, we're wearing sunscreen that blocks our ability to make vitamin D in the skin. But vitamin D, there's a few food sources such as salmon, cod liver oil, tuna, herring, egg yolks, beef liver, cheese. There really aren't any great food sources of activated vitamin D. Mushrooms have inactive vitamin D. So for that reason, supplementing with vitamin D and K2 is often recommended in addition to whatever someone consumes in diet, especially if their vitamin D is below optimal. Calcium is important for muscle function, as I mentioned. The best food sources of calcium are full-fat dairy, which might be a problem for many of you on this food sensitivity panel, leafy greens, such as kale or bok choy, and nuts and seeds. Occasionally, we might see calcium levels low enough to warrant supplementing with additional calcium beyond what's in a multivitamin, for example. But in many cases, just improving the quality of someone's diet and correcting any vitamin D deficiencies is enough to self-correct calcium. Magnesium tends to be more important than calcium for most people that we work with. Though it's not measured directly on this panel, a few markers such as GGT and alkaline phosphatase and a few other markers are actually surrogates for magnesium status. So it gives us a clue about someone's magnesium status. Why do we care? Magnesium is involved in over 300 metabolic reactions throughout the body, which include, but aren't limited to, energy production. So helping you feel energized, mood regulation, stomach acid production. That's probably the most pertinent one for this panel is many people, if they're deficient or insufficient in magnesium, they're going to have a really hard time generating enough stomach acid to optimize digestive function. Dietary magnesium intakes are often inadequate. And on top of that, magnesium is depleted as part of our stress response. There's several factors in modern lifestyles that actively strip magnesium from our bodies. So even if you increase food sources of magnesium, which tend to be things like pumpkin seeds, nuts and seeds, leafy green vegetables, supplementing with 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium per day in addition to your diet is often required to optimize magnesium status. The next is vitamin B12 and folate status. So if you see certain red blood cell markers, such as red blood cells, the red blood cell count, RBC, hemoglobin, or hematocrit below optimal, and or you see the other markers MCV, mean corpuscular volume, MCH, mean corpuscular hemoglobin, and MCHC, mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, above optimal, that suggests your vitamin B12 and folate status needs to be optimized. Good sources of vitamin B12 include grass-fed beef, red meat, wild-caught seafood, pastured poultry, and folate sources include dark leafy greens, beans or lentils, nuts, and eggs. Oftentimes, again, even if you're improving the quality of your diet, a high quality multivitamin is recommended. but only if that multivitamin provides methylated forms of these two nutrients in particular, rather than the synthetic versions that don't tend to be as helpful. Iron status. If any of these markers on your panel are low, ferritin, hemoglobin or hematocrit, RBC, MCV, MCH, or MCHC, your iron status might be less than ideal. The best food sources of iron include grass-fed beef, lamb, or bison. We recommend trying to eat those 3 times a week or more to correct a low iron status. Plant sources of iron may have measurable amounts of iron, but it's not as bioavailable, or it's not as easy to digest, break down, and absorb. Include lentils, spinach, black beans, and pistachios. It's recommended when you're consuming an iron source to eat a vitamin C source as well. That includes bell peppers, leafy greens, berries, citrus fruit. All of these help your body absorb iron from the food in that meal. So occasionally we'll have someone consider iron supplements and or digestive enzymes when ferritin is critically low or good food sources are not consumed frequently enough. Liver health markers. Liver health markers can increase due to multiple reasons. The markers here are AST, ALT, GGT, bilirubin, and alkaline phosphatase. To address elevated liver markers, the reasons for this is usually driven by chronically elevated blood glucose levels or insulin resistance, which can help or actually influence fatty liver disease. And that's can be a concern if liver markers are all elevated. And that's usually driven by poor diet choices and or alcohol intake. So to address any of these issues, we recommend removing alcohol, eliminating added sugars, especially fructose, such as high fructose corn syrup, honey, or agave, and even dried fruit. Meet fiber and water goals, get adequate protein and moderate to low carbohydrates at each of your meals, and maybe consider a specialized detox program, which is kind of a liver support program similar to a modified elimination diet, but with a few extra areas of focus to help your body restore liver integrity as well. Electrolytes and stress resilience. A couple markers we look at because stress can be a major driver of gut integrity breakdown. We look at indirect measures of how your body and your adrenal glands may be handling stress. And those include the electrolytes here, sodium, potassium, chloride. We lose electrolytes through sweat and as part of our stress response. If we don't replace them, it just makes it more difficult for our body to maintain its resilience. It also makes it more difficult to feel energized. So if sodium in particular is below optimal and or potassium is above optimal, it does kind of clue us in that your body's having a difficult time handling the stress you're encountering. So if this is you, if you know stress is a root cause or a root issue for you, then it really does help to take a more comprehensive lifestyle approach to this whole food sensitivity journey by really dedicating yourself to 7 or more hours of sleep every night. Try supplementing with magnesium or Relax, which is a helpful nighttime supplement that supports sleep onset. So kind of that relaxation effect in the evening to get your body into sleep, as well as sleep depth or quality. So giving those things a try is highly recommended, especially if stress is an issue. Consider adding electrolytes or liberalizing salt at your meals, especially if you're eating fewer processed foods and more wholesome, unprocessed foods. You'll need to consciously replace some of the electrolytes that are normally artificially loaded in processed food items. And then actively manage stress. So in your Lifetime member app, you have, it's included with your membership, Lifetime meditation. There's countless ways to either do a midday reset, a nighttime kind of sleepy time story, or guided deep breathing meditation to help your body balance its fight or flight nervous system versus its rest and digest nervous system. So that oftentimes requires a conscious effort. The Lifetime meditation component in the app is just a helpful tool for you to use and have some guidance in that area. If you know stress is a root issue for you, I would consider testing saliva cortisol. I should say saliva, not salvia, on the screen, and DHEA with an ultimate all-in-one panel as well. So a few other markers to mention, to call out here. Some of them have been called out on previous slides, but if you have low creatinine, it indicates you either have protein intake, digestion, or absorption that are too low. If your AST or ALT, those liver markers, are low instead of high, like previously covered, it can indicate poor vitamin B6 status. And if you have low alkaline phosphatase or low lymphocytes, it can be a telltale sign of diminished zinc status. So if in your coach's notes, you saw some notes about B6, protein, or zinc, double check those markers. That might be the reason why the coach gave you that specific advice. So quick recap on part 2. I know it was a lot of technical information, but feel free to go back and listen again. We know that food sensitivities don't develop overnight, and it's not just the foods themselves that cause it. It's multifactorial. For that reason, optimizing gut health requires a more comprehensive approach. That's why we have not just the foods on this panel, but we also have those other markers that help us kind of deduce reasons why each individual may have developed this level of food sensitivities. That comprehensive approach does require good, careful food choices, a modified elimination diet. It requires modifications to how you conduct your eating at meal times, and even after meals. It oftentimes requires smart supplementation and patience and time. For some of you, this might be just a few weeks of being more careful. Others with more severe food sensitivities and underlying drivers of it, it may take 3 to 5 months of more careful eating approaches. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect all the time, but it does require patience and time and some concentration. For that reason, you might want to consider hiring a coach to support you through the application of all these principles in your day-to-day life. So I would highly encourage you to reach out to a nutrition coach you know and trust at your nearest Lifetime club. If you need help locating one, certainly reach out to us at assessments@lt.life. Some additional resources I mentioned in part 1 of this series. If you missed that, or you just needed a reminder of where to find them, go to experiencelife.lifetime.life. And if you search digestive health or gut health or leaky gut, any of those keyword terms will lead you to dozens of articles that will help you learn more about gut health and what to do about it. These are just a few of my favorites to recommend for people who kind of need to wrap their head around, what do I do now? And then if you're more technically oriented and you want to dig into the scientific research around food sensitivities, here's a few links for you to play around with as well. Thanks for joining me on this Food Sensitivity Plus webinar series. Look forward to reading your success stories soon.